Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 24 of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 25 of it, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Naruto's eyes snapped open as he heard evil laughter echo all around him. Sitting up, the blonde looked around and then pushed himself to his feet when he saw Raven nearby. Kar-chan, what are you? He started to ask when Raven suddenly spoke. The gem was born of evil's fire, she stated, Naruto blinking as she did. The gem shall be his portal, she added while suddenly opening 4 glowing red eyes. He comes to claim, he comes to sire, she added before giving a sad smile as red markings formed over her skin. The end of all things mortal, she exclaimed before a ring of red energy formed around her waist. Kar-chan, Naruto exclaimed only to hold up his arms as the ring split in two, traveling up and down her body as they tore her apart. No, Naruto tried to say as he pushed towards Raven before her body suddenly vanished, and he was sent flying back. Screaming out as he hit the ground then bounced several paces back, Naruto gritted his teeth while sitting up only for his eyes to widen in a combination of shock and horror. All around him lay Jump City, now left in ruins with 2 ominous shadows hovering over him. Such a tiny thing, this mortal. A deep voice boomed out as Naruto sat up and looked around, eyes widening as he saw the silhouette of 2 monstrous beings looming over him. I told you he was nothing but an engine runt. The Kyuubi's voice echoed as the fox's eyes began to glow, narrowing on Naruto as its wide psychotic grin stretched across its long muzzle. Indeed. Although, he does hold a fair amount of power within that puny form. The second voice intoned as a 4-eyed monster with red skin stood beside of Kyuubi, arms crossed while looking down at Naruto with a deep frown. Chuckling, Kyuubi leaned his head towards Naruto, bloodshot eye looking down at him as his grin widened to impossible lengths. Do you see this, child? This is your fate, you and all you love shall be consumed by our fires. Kyuubi stated darkly, the red-skinned monster grinning as well as he raised a hand. Forming a ball of fire into his outstretched hand, the monster then looked down at Naruto, and narrowed his eyes. The time for mortals shall soon come to an end, he exclaimed before slamming his flaming fist down into Naruto. Tartarus HQ. Sitting up and panting as he awoke from his most recent nightmare, Naruto looked around. Seeing everything was fine, the blonde-haired youth fell back into his pillow, heart beating a mile a minute. Just a dream, he whispered to himself, eyes closed before he opened them once more. No. More like a nightmare, he mumbled to himself while sitting back up. Yawning, Naruto stretched his arms out before smacking his lips for a moment. Rubbing his head with one hand, Naruto then cracked his neck and gave out a light sigh. Damn, I really needed that little nap, he noted to himself, while getting up and stretching out his limbs for a moment. Looking to his clock, the blonde blinked then grimaced upon seeing it wasn't a little nap, instead being more of a day's worth of sleep since it was well afternoon. Yikes, I was really wiped out this time, he noted while rubbing his head, making a note never to overload his chakra like that ever again, considering his normal Rasengan was a little more draining than a Futon Rasengan or Rasen Shuriken, so one the size he used. Shaking his head at that thought, Naruto stretched to the sides for a moment, loosening his muscles a bit before placing his hands on his hips. Alright, what to do today? Naruto wondered before scowling as he remembered the punishment he still had to dish out on the girls. Right, business before I go out and enjoy myself a little, Naruto said to himself, while walking over to his closet, then dug out his most durable clothes, before laying them out. Looking around, he then remembered his red X suit was out of commission, and shrugged his shoulders. I guess it wouldn't kill me to get back to basics, Naruto mused while walking to his bed and pulled on a black Onbuishu shirt with the mask curled down over his neck, a pair of fingerless black forearm-length gloves with red bands around his wrists and metal plates at the back of each hand, a pair of black pants, his gray utility belt when he stowed the scroll into, as well as a few other knickknacks, bandages around his shins and feet to hold his pants down tightly, a kunai case on his right thigh, and then pulled on his old black calf-length shinobi sandals, some red bands placed around his ankles. Smirking, Naruto then grabbed his black headband with a red spiral and tied it over his forehead before standing up and walking back into his closet. Frowning, the teen looked around for one of his sheaths before pulling out an old one, this one being in a Y shape with armor over one shoulder and only one sheath. I wore this one when I left Konoha, Naruto mumbled to himself before shrugging as he slipped it on, then grabbed a ninjutsu and sheathed it on his back. Yawning for a brief moment then smacking his lips, Naruto then walked out of his room and looked around before making his way towards the common room. Time to deal with the girls, he mumbled under his breath while reaching the room, then walked inside and turned his head to see Wela of all people was cooking. Wela can cook? Naruto questioned seriously, and Donnie flew out of the floor, dressed in her casual attire in human form. Not really, but she likes to dream. Donnie admitted while Naruto nodded his head slowly before looking to see the guys playing one of their video games, Blackfire watching with less than a dull interest in what they were doing. What's with the sandals? Donnie then asked while looking at the odd sandal boots, as she mentally labeled them, and Naruto rolled his eyes. I used to wear sandals all the time, and I kind of felt like getting back to my roots while my suit is being redone. Naruto admitted before looking around the room for Jinx, then narrowed his eyes when he didn't see her. Where's Jinx? Naruto asked flatly, and Donnie took a thoughtful expression for a moment, while tapping her chin. I think she's talking with Gizmo about something. Donnie offered and Naruto frowned slightly before walking over to an intercom. Is Jinx with you down there? The blonde questioned before watching as the bald midget came up on screen with a scowl. Yeah, she's shit liquor, what do you need? Gizmo replied with his arms crossed and Naruto narrowed his eyes on Donnie, nearly making her sink into the ground. Have her head over to the training room, she and the other girls are still in trouble for that stunt they pulled. Naruto growled out and Blackfire and Will both grimaced upon hearing his words. This obviously wouldn't end well. Making their way down to the whole room, the group entered it to find Jinx sitting down with a frown. Sighing when she saw Naruto, Jinx stood up and brushed her skirt off, while giving him an annoyed look. Alright, what did you need me for? Jinx questioned and Naruto ignored her, merely walking past her and crossing his arms. Computer, activate training level, Konoha TG7. Naruto stated and instantly the room around them shimmered, before turning into an almost perfect recreation of the old training ground 7 in Konoha. I've got a bad feeling about this. Donnie suddenly mumbled and Naruto turned around, his eyes narrowed, and face set into a scowl. Really have a bad feeling about this. Donnie mumbled while the door sealed behind them. Alright, each of you had a helping hand in our little problem yesterday. Naruto stated, and the girls gave a few sheepish looks in response. And as I said, you're all going to be enjoying a little training. And that training is. Naruto explained and then held up a single finger, smirking as he did. Survival exercises. Naruto stated and Jinx gaped towards the blonde-haired ex-shinobi. Survival exercises. What the hell? We taking on the Titans and you going to be making us go on a hike? Jinx demanded and Naruto suddenly grinned darkly, Jinx shutting up and backing up behind Blackfire as he looked at them. Heh, you don't know what Konoha's survival exercises are like, basically is all of you fighting for survival against me. However, whenever I capture one of you, you're out of the game, and cannot help those still playing as I try and beat them with my skills. Naruto stated simply and Jinx grimaced, the other girls giving her an annoyed glare. Also you might want to come at me with the intent to kill. Naruto stated and got wide eyes from all but Dwayla, who grinned insanely as she reached a hand into her bag. Because, I wouldn't be holding back for once. The blonde-haired teen uttered, while vanishing into thin air, Dwayla looking around for him. Oh shit. Donnie said while she and Blackfire quickly flew into the air, and started looking around for him. Where'd he go? Blackfire questioned and Donnie shook her head, Jinx forming pink energy around her hands before Naruto appeared before her. Lesson 1, Taijutsu. Naruto stated before smirking as he took a stance, and thrusting his palm into Jinx's abdomen, sending her flying back into Dwayla. Shadow Claw Taijutsu, Style 4, the art of the open palm. Naruto stated while looking up towards Donnie and Blackfire, a smirk crossing over his lips as he made a simple command gesture with one hand. Titan's Tower. Nightwing was sitting down and looking over a file on Red X with a scowl. Nearby, Beast Boy and Cyborg were playing a video game, while Kid Flash watched them. Starfire was explaining something to Wonder Girl about the day-to-day workings of the tower, and Raven was watching all of this from the kitchen. Just another ordinary day at Titan's Tower. Raven mused to herself since it seemed that even with 2 new Titans added to the team, their habits would never change. Sighing, the violet-haired girl then turned and readied some herbal tea, listening absently to the others as they conversed. Oh, new friend Girl of Wonder, do you think that we could go to the mall of shopping later? I would very much like to introduce you to the joys of earthly hair ornaments. Starfire questioned of Wonder Girl with a bright innocent smile stretched across her face, and the black-haired girl blinked. First of all, it's Wonder Girl. Second, just call me Donna. Third, I already know what hair ornaments are and have a few. Donna stated and Starfire blinked, before scratching her head, and snapping her fingers with a bright smile. Then perhaps we could do the shopping of windows, it is most enjoyable and does not use any of the cash monies. Starfire offered while hugging Donna with one arm and grinning widely, the Amazonian literally shrugging off Starfire's strength with her own formidable strength. Well, if I go with you, could we get milkshakes while we're out? Donna asked and Starfire grinned widely, before nodding her head vigorously. Indeed. I would be most mirthful to partake in the shaking of Mile with you. Starfire said and then blinked for a moment. But please, why would you wish to shake the milk? Starfire questioned naively, Donna snorting and then snickering as she tried to hold back full-blown laughter. I don't mean shaking milk, Starfire. It's ice cream mixed with milk that's made into a drink. Donna offered and Starfire blinked for a moment before making an O with her mouth, and then smiling brightly. Oh, that sounds most delightful, the sweetness of the ice cream is always most enjoyable. And perhaps they will also have a mustard-flavored shake of milk as well. Starfire said aloud, and Donna gaped at the alien girl incredulously before shivering at the thought of a mustard-flavored milkshake. Okay, I'm from an island with no men or technology, where we hunt for our food if we don't grow it, and I still think that's really weird. Donna thought to herself while Raven shook her head in the background as she sipped her herbal tea, absently reading the Amazonian girl's surface thoughts. If you think that was weird, wait till she introduces you to some more of her Tamaranian culture, Donna. Raven thought to herself before turning her eyes towards Beast Boy, Cyborg, and KF as they sat on the couch. So when do I get a turn? KF questioned of Beast Boy and Cyborg, the Titanium Titan answering for him. When Green Bean here gets caught. Cyborg replied with a smirk, while Beast Boy narrowed his eyes on the game. No way dude, Cyborg Shinobi Showdown is so my game. You may whip me repeatedly in racing, first-person shooters, and strategy games, but this is my. Beast Boy started to say, only to gape as Cyborg's character vanished, then reappeared behind him, before slicing his character in half. You were saying Beast Boy? Cyborg gasped with a grin, and Beast Boy gave him an annoyed glare, only to quickly have his control taken by KF. So what is this game anyways? KF asked while taking over as Beast Boy sulked to the side with a pout. Cyborg Shinobi Showdown, it's just a basic fighting role-playing game man. It's okay for its make and all, but Beast Boy likes it mostly cause it has ninja in it. Cyborg offered with a yawn and Beast Boy glared at him indignantly once more. Dude. So not cool, Cyborg. I never diss any of your favorite games like that. Beast Boy said while glaring and Cyborg rolled his eyes in response. Let's just face it B, it was a good game at first, but it's not so fun after you've learned all the secrets and beaten this story mode. Cyborg said with a shake of his head and Beast Boy crossed his arms with a huff. Yeah well the new one's going to be awesome. Beast Boy stated and Cyborg frowned as he and KF played the game. You mean Cyborg Shinobi Chronicles right? That new MMORPG they came out with to increase the fan base? Cyborg questioned and Beast Boy frowned towards his longtime friend for a moment. Yeah. You get to make your very own Cyborg ninja in it. Beast Boy reminded and Cyborg had to admit that did sound a little interesting, and it also gives you special items when you have a saved game of Cyborg Shinobi Showdown. Beast Boy then added, and Cyborg nodded his head before smirking as he took down KF's character. Man, how can you concentrate on beating me while talking to him? KF questioned and Cyborg gave a cheeky grin in response. I'm just that good. He replied while blinking as a frowning Nightwing turned off the game off. Hey, we were playing that. Cyborg complained and I pinched the bridge of his nose for a moment before hitting a button on the computer, bringing up several criminal files on the big screen. Sorry to interrupt your game guys, but we have more important things to worry about. Nightwing stated before bringing up files for Jinx, Dwilla, and Blackfire. First of all, the fact that these three are now working together. Nightwing stated, and both Donna and KF grimaced when they saw Dwilla. Oh shit it's the Joker's daughter, man does she follow you or something, dick? KF questioned and Night twitched slightly for a moment before Starfire frowned at the list of girls on the screen. Please friend Robin, what of the Ray girl that I did battle with? Was she not also working with my sister, the Jinx, and this Joker's daughter person? Starfire questioned and Night sighed before typing in the name Ray, with a blank folder with the others on screen. I would have added her star, but I didn't know her name, nor do I have a picture of her to add to the list. Night responded and Starfire made a no, while nodding her head. Crossing his arms, Night then turned to the screen, while crossing his arms over his chest. Alright, what we now know is that Jinx is a member of a team. What we've seen for a fact so far is that at the very least Blackfire, Dwilla, and this Ray girl are also on that team along with Red X. Night explained while pointing to the screen, and Beast Boy frowned. Dude, how do you know they're all on the same team? Beast Boy asked and Nightwing rolled his eyes. Because X never showed up until after the girls attacked us. Also, he mentioned telling Harley and Ivy he didn't want them trashing his city, and he mentioned having Gizmo on his team. So, since Gizmo is most often teamed up with Jinx and Mammoth, we know who two more of his partners are, and that Jinx and the other girls are on his team as well. Nightwing explained and Beast Boy blinked before slowly nodding his head. Alright, now then, what do we know of X team based on the members we know are in it thus far? Nightwing questioned of the others and Cyborg rubbed his chin with a frown. Well for one, Jinx has powers over bad luck as we've seen before, she's also a gymnast, and not to mention one of the smartest of the Hive group. Add on Blackfire and X intelligence and you've got some problems. Mammoth is strong, suitable for heavy moving or knocking down walls, but not really for stealth. Gizmo is mechanically smart, regardless of how much he annoys me, I gotta admit that he knows what he's doing when it comes to machines. So he's probably the one who works on X suit and gadgets. Cyborg offered with a thoughtful expression across his face, and Starfire grimaced. I would also like to add that the Ray girl could fly, pass through walls and other solid objects, do the vanishing, and form beams of energy from her body. Starfire offered while rubbing her head, a phantom pain from being slammed into the ground still haunting her. Also, my sister Blackfire has all my powers, but added onto it is a keen military mind and numerous martial arts. Starfire then explained with a finger raise, and KF blinked for a moment. I was wondering why they look so similar. KF stated while looking from Starfire to the picture of Blackfire. It isn't that hard to see the resemblance. Raven mused while KF looked at her in shock as she appeared behind him. What? She asked with a raised brow, and KF looked at her strangely. Don't sneak up on me like that, he stated, and Raven rolled her eyes for a moment before turning back to the screen. Alright, good. Anyone got anything to add? Knight asked, and Raven nodded her head with a thin frown. However, before anyone else could speak, Beast Boy then popped up with a grin. Dudes, if Jinx, Mammoth, and Gizmo are on X team, what's to say none of the other members of the Hive didn't join up with them? Beast Boy asked, and Nightwing frowned for a moment then nodded his head. Good point, Beast Boy, but we still don't know if that's the case. Nightwing reminded, and Beast Boy shrugged his shoulders. True, dude. But maybe we should check out the old roster of Hive members. Cyborg might be able to figure out if any of them are on that team. Beast Boy offered thoughtfully, Knight, Star, Raven, and Cyborg all looking at him strangely. What? Beast Boy questioned, and Cyborg shook his head for a moment. Wow, that was actually a good idea. I mean, yeah, I might not find who else is on his team exactly, but at least we could prepare. Cyborg said aloud, and Raven suddenly reached out and poked Beast Boy in the head. Dude, what was that for? Beast Boy demanded, and Raven shrugged her shoulders. Just making sure you were you. She replied, and Beast Boy gave her a look in response as she turned to Nightwing. Also, we know Johnny Rancid isn't on good terms with Red X and his team, especially if the fact he came in on one of the Motorhead's motorcycles is of any indication. Raven then offered, and Knight nodded his head slowly with a frown. True, but still this is almostly just speculation. Knight reminded, and Raven shrugged her shoulders with a bored look. Yeah, but that's all we can really do for the time being, at least until Lex and his team decides to try and steal something so we can fight them. She reminded with a flat tone, and Knight nodded his head. He had to give her that much. Hey, how much information do you actually have on this Red X guy, Dick? Donna suddenly asked, while leaning forward on the back of the couch, and Knight turned to the computer and brought up a file on Red X. Is it just me, or does he not wear that outfit? KF asked while looking at the caped Red X with a frown. Sighing for a moment, Knight started rubbing his face before he explained why that was. No, I suppose it's not the same one he wears now, but in my own defense, I haven't had time to update these files recently, and I don't have a clear picture of X in his new gear, since he's constantly changing it. Knight explained with a slight frown across his face, and KF nodded his head while Cyborg leaned forward. Alright, we know X has powers over the elements of wind and lightning to a startling degree, what seems like a heightened healing factor, the capability to use, not just one but two swords at the same time, a myriad of gadgets at his fingertips, strange energy-based abilities added onto the elemental ones, the ability to multiply, enhance strength and speed, and he's also got a keen mind, and very advanced martial arts skills. Cyborg mused aloud, and KF whistled at the list, while Donna frowned for a moment. That is an impressive amount of abilities. Donna noted while Starfire decided to put in her own 2 cents. He also has the ability to do the teleporting, and seems to have very little interest in destroying the city. Starfire piped up, and Nightwing nodded his head. Yeah, he's not psychotic like the Joker or most other villains, though he is selfish. He doesn't really have a need to cause mass destruction or rule the world like most villains. Knight said mostly to himself as he leaned back and tapped a finger into his bicep. However, Knight then turned when the alarm went off, his eyes narrowing as he quickly brought up the map of Jump City on screen. Shit, Titans, we've got Plasmus, Overload, and Cinderblock attacking downtown. Move. Nightwing ordered, and the group quickly made their way out of the ops center. Tartarus HQ. Donnie flew through the air with wide eyes as she and the other girls trained with Naruto, which at the moment mostly consisted of him beating the ever-loving crap out of them with taijutsu as he called it. Note to self, next time I feel like doing something stupid, remind myself of this lesson in pain. Donnie thought to herself as Blackfire was thrown into her, both of them hitting the ground. Ouch. Donnie mumbled to herself while Blackfire groaned out in pain. I thought humans were weaker than Tamaranians. Blackfire mumbled aloud, while rubbing her forehead, and Donnie snorted for a moment. I'm not 100% sure he's actually human. Donnie grumbled out in a pained voice before pushing Blackfire off of herself. Rolling onto her back, Blackfire heard Whale yelp and tilted her head back in time to see the girl being thrown into the air. Naruto then vanished, before appearing above her, and slammed a single open palm down into her back, sending her careening into the ground. I think she's getting a little too much punishment. Blackfire noted while Jinx popped up from behind a rock, eyes wide in fright. Actually, no, she's not. She did kinda admit to carrying around Smilex and Fear Toxin, and tried to use it on him. Jinx stated, then reminded, and Blackfire grimaced, thankful it seemed that neither had worked on the boy as he tied Wayla up, and then hung her from a nearby tree. Nodding his head as Wayla hung, Naruto then turned towards the other three, and each quickly rushed off. Smirking, Naruto whistled while making his way after the three girls. Blackfire took to the air to evade Naruto. While she knew this would only slow him down, it was better than being captured immediately. Looking around for him, she groaned upon seeing him appear before her with a grin. Honestly, you flying? Don't you know that won't work against me? Naruto questioned before twisting into a kick, Blackfire easily evading and flying higher into the air. Evade this, she shouted while gathering a large star bolt into her hands before throwing it down at Naruto. Grinning, the blonde-haired youth evaded the attack and landed in a crouch on the ground. Very good, but now it's time for lesson 2, ninjutsu. Naruto uttered while Donnie and Jinx ducked into the surrounding trees. Shaking her head, Blackfire went into the trees as well, Naruto suddenly vanishing as he used a shunshin. Appearing in the trees, Naruto contemplated how he was going to weed the girl out before snapping his fingers. Kage Bunshi no Jutsu, he exclaimed as 3 plumes of smoke appeared all around him. Spread out and find them. Naruto ordered and his clones hopped to work, quickly spreading out while Naruto crossed his arms with a smirk. It's only a matter of time, Naruto thought to himself as his clones rushed off amongst the trees in search of the girls. Said girls were dispersed, Donnie having gone intangible and invisible was hiding within a tree, while watching for Naruto. Taking a gulp of air, she put her hands over her mouth to prevent a yelp as one of Naruto's clones landed on the tree she was hiding within. Looking around silently, the clone frowned, before launching further into the trees, Donnie giving a silent sigh of relief as it left. Elsewhere, Blackfire wasn't really hiding, as much as she was resting. She was hanging in a tree, her back to it with one leg on a nearby tree holding her up. Cracking her neck, Blackfire then considered her options against Naruto in this ninjutsu contest of his. Looking down, she saw one of Naruto's clones, and contemplated using an attack before thinking better of it. It had been proven, twice now, she was no match for him if she attacked head-on after all. Watching the clone, she breathed out when it moved on and thus slid down the trees before finding a new place to hide. Meanwhile, Jinx was making her way through several bushes, her eyes darting to and fro as she did. We just had to piss him off, didn't we? Jinx couldn't help but think to herself as she continued to make her way through the bushes until suddenly bumping into something. Grimacing, the Pinkhead looked up and then flipped back as the Naruto clone looked at her with a smirk. Found you, Jinx, Naruto said in a sing-song, and Jinx quickly threw a hex bolt at the teen. Smirking as the hex bolt hit, the clone was consumed by the ground, before going up in a plume of smoke, Jinx blinking for a moment before grimacing. He used the clone thing of his. She mumbled to herself before looking all around for wherever Naruto was. The said boy suddenly opened his eyes from on top of a tree and smirked as he fell down, and then seemed to dig through the ground. Making his way towards where Jinx had been, Naruto knew his clones would have already gone to distract the Pinkhead for him. And upon heard what sounded like Jinx's hex bolts, Naruto smirked while digging until he came to a spot near Jinx. Oi, if I'd known this shit was this much fun before, I would have gotten me a Genin team. Naruto couldn't help but think while Jinx finished off the last of his shadow clones. Doten. Shinju Zanshin no Jutsu. Earth Release. Headhunter Jutsu. Naruto suddenly exclaimed as he reached his hands up before dragging Jinx down into the ground, leaving only her head free. What the hell? Jinx demanded while struggling to free herself from the dirt. Seconds later, Naruto flipped out of the ground, and into a crouch, smirking at Jinx as he then crossed his arms. Man, and here I thought taking all 4 of you would actually be something of a challenge. Naruto mused to himself, before turning and making his way away from an angry Jinx as she glared at his back. Hey, get me out of here. Damn it, this isn't funny, Tempest, Jinx exclaimed loudly, still struggling, and Naruto snickered to himself while making his way further into the forest, wondering idly if this was how easy Kakashi had it against him, Sakura, and of course the Team Sasuke. Probably. Naruto mused with a nod of his head before sighing as he formed a single hand seal and stood still. Lesson 3, Genjutsu. Naruto stated before a stern look crossed his features, and he crossed his arms over his chest. Shadow Claw Taijutsu, Style 2. The Art of True Fear. Naruto stated as he closed his eyes, an ominous mist forming all around the area and rising up into the air. Meanwhile, Donnie and Blackfire were all hiding in their own spots when the strange mist suddenly rolled over them. What the? Blackfire wondered mostly to herself while looking around, then shivered as a familiar feeling suddenly overtook her body. I remember this. She mumbled before wrapping her arms over herself and backed up into a tree. The Art of True Fear. She mumbled to herself while looking all around for Naruto. Nearby, Donnie was nearly hyperventilating, a feeling as if some kind of killer was stalking her present in her mind. What the hell is this? Donnie wondered to herself while slowly making her way out of the tree and onto a branch, still unable to see a single thing due to the mists. This is one of the styles my mother helped me to create. Naruto's voice suddenly echoed out, and both Donnie and Blackfire looked for a source. It wasn't easy seeing as I'm not really that good at using normal genjutsu. But chakra shaping and manipulation is my specialty. So, Mom had this funny idea, rather than channel chakra for genjutsu, we figured out how to channel killing intent and chakra together. Thus, when hit by it, rather than me having to create something for you to experience, your own mind creates the genjutsu, allowing you to enjoy your very own private hell. Naruto suddenly explained as Donnie shivered, the dark tone of voice he was using causing no small amount of fear in her. Meanwhile, Blackfire was trying desperately to distance herself from Naruto. The first time she'd been inflicted by this, she'd been scared out of her mind. Learning that it was truly her worst nightmares made manifest didn't really make the ability all that appealing. I'm not going through it again, I hate this stupid trick already, and he's only used it on me once before. Seconds after this thought, Blackfire fell to the ground and shook her head. Looking down, she felt her eyes widen in shock at what she was seeing. Her armor was gone. Her armor was not only gone, but dark shadows were suddenly started to rise up all around her. Oh no, Zal, no, please not this again. Blackfire thought to herself while quickly standing up and looking all around as the blackness soon completely covered everything else. No. No, I don't want to be alone. Blackfire mumbled quietly, while bringing her arms up to wrap them around herself. Looking for any sign of light or of Naruto, the Tamaranian princess was not surprised to find no one and nothing was around her. No, I don't want to be alone again, I hate being alone. Blackfire thought to herself, and then backed up, then turned and started to reach out, trying desperately to find anything she could touch. Meanwhile, Donnie was taking deep steady breaths, trying to control her own reaction to the strange ability. However, she then paled greatly as she felt a familiar sensation and looked down. Screaming loudly as her hands looked to be melting away, Donnie shook her hands rapidly before falling to the ground. Looking to her legs, Donnie started to pant heavily, seeing her legs melting into a puddle of green slime as well. What was truly more frightening than anything, however, was that it felt exactly like she remembered. It felt like she was really melting. No, please not this. Anything but this. Donnie screamed with tears in her eyes as she curled up into a ball, hugging herself tightly. Whimpering as in her mind she was continuing to fade into nothing, she didn't notice as Naruto walked towards her. Make it stop. She muttered pitiably and Naruto rolled his eyes, then again to his eyes. She appeared fine. Shaking his head at the sight of her curled into a ball and nearly hyperventilating, Naruto cancelled the genjutsu. Donnie's breathing returning to normal before she yelped as Naruto tied her to a nearby tree. Giving his apprentice a look, Naruto then crossed his arms while the mist slowly faded, the quivering Blackfire looking at him with wide eyes. I'm surprised you didn't scream. Naruto admitted, and Blackfire took several calming breaths before looking down to make sure she still had her armor on. In my worst fears it wouldn't have mattered if I screamed. Blackfire admitted, and Naruto decided to stow that little tidbit away. Smirking, the blonde then reached back and removed his ninjutsu from his back. Lesson 4, my personal favorite, Kenjutsu. Naruto stated with a grin, and Blackfire took a breath while giving Naruto a look. First of all, you mean sword techniques, right? Blackfire questioned, and Naruto blinked, before nodding his head. Then how exactly do you expect me to show you any, when I don't even have a sword? She demanded, and Naruto nodded his head with a thoughtful look across his face. Getting an idea, Naruto suddenly smirked while looking at the black-haired alien princess. Alright, how about this? Knock my sword out of my hand, and you can use it. Naruto offered while taking a stance, and Blackfire gave him a look for a moment, before nodding her head as she took a stance opposite him. Alright then, let's go. Naruto exclaimed before quickly lunging at Blackfire. Growling, the black-haired alien princess quickly blocked Naruto's sword with her armor, before thrusting her palm forward, into his chest, and knocking him back several paces. Not bad. Naruto mused to himself as he slid to a halt, and then twisted the ninjutsu into a reverse grip. Chuckling lightly in his throat as he took a different stance, Naruto smirked towards Blackfire. Alright princess, let's see what you can really do. Naruto called out before lunging forward, ducking low and swinging his sword once more. Quickly, Blackfire flipped over the swing and threw a kick towards Naruto's head, only for the blonde to use a Kawamari no Jutsu to replace himself with a log. Blinking in surprise at this, Blackfire then cursed while flying away as a hail of kunai came flying down on her. Growling under her breath, Blackfire flew into the trees to evade the numerous kunai. So this is what he's like when he's not holding back, though obviously he isn't completely serious about the actual fighting, or I would have been trampled by now. Blackfire thought to herself, before feeling something and quickly backflipped as Naruto swung at her from behind. Thanks Al, I was trained to detect and evade surprise attacks like that. Blackfire thought to herself, making a note to personally visit the dojo and thank the sensei there. Not bad Blackie, you're doing way better than I would have thought. Naruto complimented, and Blackfire narrowed her eyes onto the blonde-haired youth indignantly. And what exactly is that supposed to mean? She demanded, and Naruto gave her a shrug of his shoulders as his reply. Growling low in her throat, Blackfire launched forward, thrusting her palm forward into his chest, before slamming her free hand into his wrist, knocking his sword free. Cusically kicking Naruto, she sent him skidding back and couldn't help a smirk as she kicked the sword up and caught it. Swinging the blade a couple times, Blackfire then leaned it into her shoulder, a smirk stretched across her face. Now what are you going to do without your sword? Blackfire asked mockingly, and Naruto twirled on the ground, before throwing himself up into a flip and landed on the ground, almost completely unscathed. Looking at him in shock as he rubbed his chin thoughtfully, Blackfire then shook her head and lunged forward. Not used to the sword, she swung it at him sloppily, Naruto sidestepping her, and holding a foot out to trip her up, arms crossed behind his back and a smirk across his lips. Sliding to a halt behind Naruto, Blackfire breathed out before launching herself at the blonde. Swinging through him, she's surprised as he disappears in a plume of smoke, and quickly looks around for him. I'm really starting to hate that clone shit. Blackfire muttered to herself, while looking all around for the blonde-haired youth. Turning all around, she eventually saw him on a tree with a serious expression across his features. Opening his eyes and looking down at Blackfire, Naruto sighed for a moment, before chuckling in his throat. Right then, looks like I have no other option. Naruto mused to himself before forming several hand seals. Kusanagi no Tsurugi. Ku no Tachi. Brass-cutting sword, long sword of the heavens, Naruto exclaimed while throwing his hand to the side, grimacing as the sword ripped out of his flesh, and he caught it in his open palm. What the hell? Blackfire demanded, but before anything else Naruto lunged forward and slashed at her. Raising the ninjutsu to block the sword, her eyes widened in shock when the blade was sliced cleanly in half by the other sword. Shit. Blackfire then cried out while dropping the ninjutsu's hilt, and quickly flipping back as Naruto used an overhanded swing, to bring the Kusanagi down where she had been. Smirking, Naruto twirled Kusanagi in his hand before thrusting it forward, the blade shooting out towards a shocked and awed Blackfire. Shaking her head and cursing, Blackfire quickly rolled out of the way as the sword impaled several trees behind her. Chuckling in his throat, Naruto then called the blade back, the weapon returning to normal size, as Naruto took on a grim expression. Throwing the Kusanagi into the air, Naruto twisted before catching it in a backhand grip and focusing his chakra. Closing his eyes, Naruto then twisted on one heel, swinging the Kusanagi as he did. Instantly the wind around him went out in a wave, cutting through everything around him. Gaping for a moment, Blackfire then quickly flew into the air, the wind tearing trees apart, while Naruto smirked and twisted his blade in hand. Returning it to a forward grip, Naruto then vanished, appeared above Blackfire with a grin. Bearing his arms back, Naruto swung the sword down at her, Blackfire holding her arms up to block. Yelping in pain, Blackfire flipped away from Naruto and looked at her armor in shock, upon seeing he had cut through it just as easily as he had his own sword. What the hell kind of weapon is that thing? Blackfire internally demanded before watching as Naruto took a deep breath while still falling towards the ground. Landing in a low crouch, Naruto then twirled in place before swinging the Kusanagi up towards Blackfire, a burst of wind flowing straight towards her. Cursing, the girl flew out of the way as the wind went past her. Turning her now clearly white eyes towards the blonde-haired youth, Blackfire wondered what she could do to take him out now. However, Naruto didn't relent. Twirling his Kusanagi in hand, Naruto then thrust it up in the air towards Blackfire. Instantly, the blade lengthened once more, and Blackfire quickly flew out of the way before getting an idea. That sword, it's got all these special abilities. The wind thing isn't new, but cutting through anything and growing impossibly long is. If I get rid of it, he won't have any more weapons, I hope. Blackfire thought to herself before flying down towards Naruto as he called back Kusanagi's blade and raised a brow towards the girl. Smirking seconds later, Naruto felt as she kicked the Kusanagi out of his hands, and then moved his head to the side as she threw a punch at him. Hearing a roar, Naruto then flipped back as she threw a kick at him and landed with his arms crossed. Alright little girl, let's see if you can play with the big leagues. Naruto couldn't help but think, while Blackfire took hold of the Kusanagi. Laughing outright, Naruto shook his head while Blackfire fixed her eyes onto him dangerously. What exactly do you find so damn funny? She demanded with a scowl across her face, and Naruto chuckled lightly once more before grinning towards her. Well, that's simple. Naruto stated before rolling his hand, the Kusanagi instantly turning into a snake that hissed at Blackfire. Yelping, the teen dropped the snake, and it slithered over to Naruto. What the hell? How did you do that? Blackfire demanded, and Naruto couldn't help a sly smirk as he held one hand out. Slithering up one of his legs, the snake then slithered to his right arm before its tail went up into his hand. Smirking, Naruto clenched his fist on the tail and swung his arm, the snake transforming back into the Kusanagi. What good is a sword that can be used against you? Naruto quipped with a smirk across his features, and then twisted Kusanagi in hand until it was held in a reverse grip once more. Lunging forward, Naruto then twisted Kusanagi in his hands into a downward swing, and stopped the blade a millisecond before it would have sliced straight through the alien princess. You're dead. Naruto said teasingly while Blackfire fell down to her ass and looked up at him with wide eyes, as he twirled the Kusanagi in hand before leaning it into his shoulder. You cut your sword in half. Blackfire mumbled, and Naruto nodded his head for a moment before walking over to the damaged blade. Stabbing Kusanagi into the ground, he then placed the broken pieces together and concentrated his chakra into them. Smirking as the repair seal took effect, Naruto watched on as the blade was soon returned to its original perfect condition. Blackfire stared as Naruto swung his repaired sword for a couple moments, and then sheathed it onto his back before retrieving the Kusanagi. Walking over to Donnie, he cut the ropes from her, and then did the same with Twill. Finally walking over to Jinx, Naruto used a jutsu to get her out, and she gave him a very annoyed look in response, while he shrugged his shoulders for a moment. So now what, sensei? Donnie questioned while slumping slightly, and Naruto considered what they could do before stretching his arms out and falling back. Wrapping his arms behind his neck, he then stared up at the holographic clouds, and gave the girls a look. What do you need an invitation? Come on, after a hard bit of training it's always good to relax a little as well. Naruto stated, and Donnie shrugged before joining the blonde on the ground and sighed. Looking to the others, Twill then did the same, and Blackfire and Jinx sighed before joining them all and staring at the clouds. Sighing in content, Naruto cracked his neck and then looked over to Donnie. Reaching out, he plucked the domino mask from her eyes with a frown, while Donnie turned to him with a raised brow. What? She asked, and Naruto frowned towards the simple eye mask. You don't need a domino mask when you have a mask over your lower face. It's kind of redundant, and besides, you don't look like a female Robin clone without it. Naruto stated, and Donnie merely rolled her revealed eyes before looking back to the clouds above them. Say, what's with that sword you used to beat Blackfire? Jinx questioned, and Naruto rubbed his chin thoughtfully for a moment. Why do you ask? Naruto questioned with a raised brow towards the pink cat. Because, I've never seen a sword like that before, and it's kinda interesting. Jinx admitted while looking towards the Kusanagi, and Naruto suddenly held it up into the air. Closing his eyes for a moment, Naruto then smirked as he looked up to the blade, remembering everything that he had to do to get his hands on it. This sword is the legendary sword, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi itself. It was once wielded by the legendary son in Orochimaru, until I took it as my own. Naruto explained while the light of the false sun glinted off of the blade and stretched out. Whoa. So that's the Kusanagi? Jinx asked while looking at the blade in shock, and Naruto merely nodded his head. Wow, I think you have a legendary weapon and never even use it. Jinx noted, and Naruto chuckled lightly, the sword suddenly turning into a snake as it wrapped around his arm and vanished into his skin. Well, I don't like to have to rely on things like the Kusanagi. To me it's nothing but a shortcut. And I usually prefer fighting under my own power. Naruto admitted while lowering his arm and placing it back under his neck. Say, where does it go when it does that? Donnie asked curiously, and Naruto shrugged his shoulders. No clue. All I know is that once you become the sword's wielder, it becomes a part of you. Orochimaru actually had it living inside of him within a snake of all things. He admitted, and Donnie slapped her face for a moment before shaking her head as Blackfire looked over to him. Now that we're on the topic of your abilities, what was that thing you used against that plant monster last night? From the size of that blast, I almost thought it would take out more of the city, rather than just that big plant thing. Blackfire questioned, then noted curiously, and Naruto sighed softly while closing his eyes. It was a senjutsu I came up with called the Futon Choudama Rasenringa. Basically it's just a much larger version of a new jutsu I've been working on that was actually the initial test run for that version of it. Naruto admitted with an amused grin across his face, and Donnie snapped her head towards him. You mean you used an attack you hadn't perfected yet? Donnie demanded with wide eyes, and Naruto chuckled for a moment. Wow, and here I thought we couldn't be any more alike without it being creepy. Donnie muttered while snickering softly as the white flame-haired girl looked at the clowns once more. Yeah, well, I've been trying to modify my Rasengan, so it packs more of a punch than it normally would, without also having to increase its overall mass. Thus, I came up with the Futon Rasengan. Naruto offered, and Jinx looked over to him, now intrigued by that little tidbit of info. So how does it work? She questioned, and Naruto hummed in thought. Basically, it's composed of 3 shells: an outer shell, a middle shell, and an inner shell. The innermost shell is the fastest of the 3, having the energy swirling in it at a phenomenal rate, while the outermost shell is slower than it. It's at about the normal speed of a Rasengan. The middle shell is pretty much set between the other 2. Now then, the wind blades formed from it being a Futon jutsu spiral around it, and head inwards instead of outwards. Naruto explained, and Will picked up on what that meant. So you have all the energy from all 3 shells compacting into the innermost shell, thus condensing it, and making it go faster and faster as it moves forward. Twill questioned, and Naruto nodded his head mutely while staring at the clouds. Oh, I get it, and since all that wind and energy is being compressed inside of something like that monster, it started pulling all the air inside it inwards. Then when all 3 shells were broken, it forced all the compressed energy and wind outwards in an explosion of sorts that took everything around it out. Donnie said in realization, and Naruto gave a simple to the girl while closing his eyes. So, if the attack is just that, why is it called a Rasengan? Jinx asked the blonde curiously, and Naruto opened one eye and gave her a look. Because it is quite literally a group swirling sphere. It has 3 spheres inside it, thus it's a group of 1 sphere. I thought Rasengan was the best name for it. Naruto explained with a shrug, and Jinx decided he could have thought of worse names, before going back to staring at the clouds. This is nice. Donnie noted suddenly, and Naruto nodded his head. My friend Shikamaru was lazy as hell and loved doing this, just staring at the clouds was his favorite pastime. Naruto admitted, and Jinx smirked slightly, while looking to the clouds. He was that lazy genius you mentioned, right? Jinx questioned and Naruto silently nodded his head. Yeah, I thought so. Jinx admitted and then sighed in content, while laying back and watching the clouds go by. He really was a genius. This is so nice, I could do it forever. Jinx said mostly to herself, while closing her eyes, Naruto and the other girls nodding their heads in agreement. Yo temp. We've kind of got a problem downtown. Gizmo's voice suddenly blared out, causing the group to jump, Naruto muttering a mendicus under his breath before rubbing his forehead. Alright, what's happening, Giz? Naruto demanded while looking around, a floating screen with Gizmo in it popping up before them. How about your girlfriend just getting kidnapped by a freaking chick in a knockoff of Slade's outfit, while the other titans are being trashed by Cinderblock, Overload, Plasmus, and a ton of Slade commandos and hive droids? Gizmo exclaimed and Naruto was silent for a moment, the girls quickly moving away as a snarl formed on his face. Is how long until that new suit is ready? Naruto questioned with a twitch and Gizmo frowned and thought. Probably a week. He admitted and Naruto started cracking his knuckles. Alright, then it's time I started beating on things with my own two hands. Naruto growled out before pushing himself up and pulled up the mask over his lower face, as he walked over to the doorway and exited the whole room. You going to get your armor? Jinx asked, seeing the blonde leave, and he shook his head, hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. No, it'd only slow me down. He grumbled out angrily while Dwayla shivered and then made a mock prayer. Someone is dead meat. Dwayla said as Naruto exited the whole room, the other girls merely nodding their heads in agreement with her. Hey, where'd Donnie get off to? Dwayla then asked while looking around, Jinx and Blackfire blinking as they only just noticed that the younger girl was gone. Growling in his throat, Naruto made his way through Tartarus HQ before walking into his room. Moving over to his closet, he pulled out an orange Spyro mask and slipped it over his face. Pulling out the Akatsuki's rings, he added those as well, and then looked at the two versions of the Akatsuki's cloak he had. Reaching out, he took Madara's hooded cloak and pulled it over his shoulders, the hood hiding his hair as he appeared to almost mirror Madara once more. Turning away from his closet, he saw himself in a mirror and narrowed his eyes while walking out of the room, and then left the HQ completely in a plume of smoke. Jump City. Nightwing grunted as several Slade commandos fired off laser blasts towards them, more hive droids marching towards them, while Plasmus and Overload kept them down with acid and electricity. They had been handling the massive amount of droids and robots fine at first, but then Raven was captured, thus disorientating the team. Not to mention the others still haven't gotten a hang on working with Barter Donnie yet. Knight thought to himself, while mentally making a note to schedule several training sessions to get the others up to speed with fighting with them. Damn it. Knight grunted out, kneeling down next to Cyborg as he fired at Plasmus from behind an overturned car. We can't keep this up, man, there's too many. Cyborg exclaimed while Kid Flash lunged into the fray, punching his way through numerous commandos before running back to the others as Cinderblock slammed his hands into the ground. Dude. This is so crazy. I mean, we haven't even repaired the city from when Harley and Ivy trashed it yet, and now we have to deal with all this. Beast Boy exclaimed while Starfire fired her eye-beams at another Slade commando, and then ducked down with a yelp as a hive droid sent several missiles flying towards them. I believe we may be in need of the assistance, friend Ro Nightwing. Starfire said aloud, and Knight grunted before turning and throwing an ice disc into Plasmus, temporarily freezing him until Overload melted the ice with his electricity. Grimacing upon seeing this, Knight looked around and saw Donna fending off several of the robots with Cyborg, but otherwise they were being severely thrashed without Raven to at least knock out Plasmus for them. I hate to admit it, but you might be right, Star. Knight stated before ducking down as a few more missiles came their way. Kid Flash then ran out from behind the car once more and started to attack the droids again, while Donna and Cyborg covered him. Gritting his teeth, Nightwing then produced several explosive discs in both hands and quickly flipped over the car and ran into the fray. Titans, go. He exclaimed while throwing his discs, several robots going down around him as he pulled out his bow staff. Following their leader's lead, the other Titans went into battle as well, Beast Boy turning into a T-Rex as he stomped on several robots before slamming into more with his tail. Starfire grabbed one of the hive droids before throwing it into Cinderblock, while Kid Flash used this to slide next to a water hydrant. Donna quickly threw her lasso down to Kid Flash, and he placed it over the hydrant before giving a thumbs up, Donna yanking on it and ripping the hydrant out of the ground. Cyborg then made his way forward, blasting his way through several Slade commandos, before sliding to a halt by the hydrant, and using his hands to aim the water at Overload, instantly shorting him out. However, both Kid Flash and Cyborg were then grabbed by Plasmus, the muck monster screeching as it dragged them into his body. Roaring out, Cinderblock got up as well, before rushing forward, and batting Nightwing away, before slamming a fist into Beast Boy's jaw, knocking him back, and forcing him back into his human shape. Growling, Starfire concentrated and unleashed her eye-beams into Cinderblock, sending him flying back, before she threw a hail of starbolts into Plasmus, allowing Cyborg to fire a sonic blast, and pull himself and Kid Flash from its grip. Shaking his head and spitting out some Plasmus goo, Kid Flash gave a look to Cyborg. We never speak of this again, he stated, and Cyborg nodded his head in agreement with the speedster. Pushing himself away from Cyborg, Kid Flash then lunged back into the fray as Cyborg fired into the commandos, and then ducked down as a missile passed over him. Narrowing his eyes, Cyborg then lunged at a hive droid and lashed out, slamming his Sony cannon into its chest before firing, thus sending it flying back as he then rolled out of the way of several blasts from Slate commandos. Meanwhile, Kid Flash was running around the field, dodging and weaving around the many Slate commandos. Grabbing a metal pipe from the ground, Kid Flash started to slam it into the commandos' heads, knocking them off the robots. This isn't so bad, Kid Flash mused before two Slate commandos looked to one another and lunged at the speedster. Smirking, Kid Flash ducked under them, and then quickly ran around them, causing a small tornado to lift them up into the air. However, as those commandos distracted Kid Flash, two more made their move. Reaching to his side, the first threw an explosive disc at the tornado, causing it to explode and knock Kid Flash into the air. Moving quickly, the second commando slammed a fist into Kid Flash, before then flipping into a kick to his chin, knocking him back, while the two commandos he'd held in the air came down on him as well, soon knocking the speedster out. Making their way over to the speedster, one held out his blaster to finish him off until Cyborg and Donna intervened, Cyborg firing his cannon and taking out two of them, while Donna grabbed the other two, before throwing them into a wall. Nearby, three more Slate commandos made their move, two grabbing another's outstretched arms before throwing it. The commando rammed into a flying Starfire, then while in the air, slammed a fist into her gut as they landed. Bearing back a fist, the commando then started to repeatedly slam its fists into Starfire, while the others dealt with the remaining Titans. Grimacing as he pulled the unconscious form of Kid Flash to safety, Cyborg then fired a sonic beam at the commando, while Nightwing got up and gathered Starfire before bringing her behind the side-turned car as well. Breathing heavily, Cyborg turned to Nightwing with a frown, while Donna continued an aerial assault on the attackers. "We can't keep this up for much longer," Cyborg noted as more commandos approached. "Ugh, where do they keep coming from?" Cyborg demanded, then blinked as several of the commandos were suddenly cut into pieces, a cloaked figure walking towards them, dressed in an orange spiral mask with a long black cloak with red clouds over the debris. "What the hell?" Cyborg questioned and then watched the figure swing his sword, as a blade of wind came off of the sword, before cutting several of the Slate commandos and hive droids in half. "Who?" Nightwing wondered while the figure came closer to them, stepping over Beast Boy's prone form, while holding a familiar ninjutsu in hand. "Is that Axe?" Cyborg questioned, only for the person to then grabs a commando and stab it in the gut, then literally gut it, before throwing it into one of the other commandos silently. "Okay, that's definitely not Axe. Axe would have started mouthing off by now." Cyborg mumbled while the figure continued to march forward, silent as the grave and getting ever closer to them. The figure merely turned his head towards Cyborg and Nightwing before silently walking forward, eyes narrowed dangerously on the robots before him. "Useless hunks of metal," Naruto growled out while holding his sword, gripping its hilt tightly. Suddenly stopping, Naruto narrowed his eyes, while the robots all aimed at him, some of them backing up. "I have only one question for you," Naruto stated, Nightwing easily recognizing his voice and blinking in surprise. "It's Naruto," Nightwing questioned in shock while Cyborg nodded his head. "What the hell is he doing down here? I know he cares about Rei, but he's been trying to lay low," Cyborg said aloud while Naruto looked all around himself and glared at the many robots angrily. "My one question is, where is Raven?" Naruto demanded of the robots, and they quickly fired their blasters, or in other cases, missiles at him. "If that's how you want to play, then so be it," Naruto growled out as he suddenly vanished into thin air as the energy from their attacks hit empty air. Blinking, and feeling an ominous wind flow past them, Cyborg and Night both watched on cautiously as Naruto suddenly reappeared in front of Cinderblock, and then plowed a Rasengan into his stomach, thus sending him flying back through a building. "Oh shit," Cyborg whispered while Plasma spit some acid at the blonde-haired youth, the boy vanishing as it did. Naruto then appeared in the air and formed a cage Bunshin. Looking to it, they both nodded, and Naruto threw the clone into Plasmus. Instantly Naruto held up his hand, forming a single seal. "Bunshin Daibakuha," Naruto called out loudly, and the shadow clone exploded within Plasmus, sending the massive beasts flying out in all directions, while Donna shielded herself by ducking behind a building, Cyborg and Night ducking down to evade any of Plasmus's leftovers. Coming out from their cover, they all saw Naruto land on the ground while turning to the commandos as they fired on the blonde. Lifting his sword, Naruto twirled it in place, blocking the beams for a moment until his sword shattered, thus causing him to shake his head. "Looks like I've been too rough with this one. I'll need a much more durable weapon from now on," Naruto mused to himself, before throwing his hand to one side with his eyes narrowed. "Kusanagi no Tsurugi, Ku no Tachi," Naruto exclaimed while once more forming the legendary sword and taking hold of its hilt with a slight grimace of pain. "Damn it, the stupid thing really needs an easier way of being summoned. That fucking hurts." Naruto can't help but think while the hive droids suddenly launched several missiles at him. Frowning, Naruto lunged forward, flipping and dodging around the many missiles before landing on the other side of him. Moving quickly, several commandos lunged at him. Naruto's eyes closed as a flash passed for a second. The commandos then hit the ground before falling to several pieces and sparking violently at his feet. Kicking ahead of one commando into the air, Naruto then twisted and kicked it at another commando, taking its head off with it. Obviously sensing danger, the many robots lunged forward, attacking him with everything they had. Naruto merely tilted his head to one side for a moment before holding the Kusanagi to his side. As the robots got closer, Naruto quickly swung the sword, the blade instantly lengthening and slicing straight through dozens of the robots in a single stroke of the blade. Those remaining looked at the blonde-haired youth as he then swung the sword diagonally, and narrowed his eyes on the remaining robots dangerously. Meanwhile, Knight looked to Cyborg, both having wide eyes at the show that Naruto was providing for them. Note to self, never piss off Raven's boyfriend. Cyborg muttered and Nightwing nodded his head in agreement with the titanium teen. Oh, I fear that my head is doing much of the pounding. Starfire suddenly mumbled as she got up, Donna flying down and bringing Beast Boy over to them. Blinking, the orange-skinned alien saw Kid Flash was also starting to come to, thus stood slightly, and looked towards whatever Cyborg and Nightwing were staring at. Please friends, who is the frightening figure with the sword that seems to be destroying Slade's robots of badness? Starfire questioned and Cyborg shivered, Kid Flash sitting up and then gaping at what he was witnessing. Holy shit, who is that dude and how did he do that? Kid Flash demanded and Nightwing grunted. That would be Raven's boyfriend, and he's apparently very pissed off. Knight offered and Starfire gasped while inwardly Kid Flash paled, praying that the guy never found out he made a pass at Raven. Dick, how in Hare's name is a warrior with that much power in your city not on your team or even fighting with the Justice League by now? Donna demanded and Knight frowned for a moment before sighing. He's laying low, some other ninja are after him for leaving his village, and after seeing that I'm guessing that he doesn't want to have to hurt them. Knight explained and Donna frowned, before turning back towards Naruto and he quickly formed more hand seals, the robots staying far away from him this time. Cage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto created out as roughly 24 shadow clones appeared around him, all equipped with the Kusanagi. Holding out a single hand, Naruto motioned towards the Slade commandos, and the clones nodded their heads. Instantly they all began to form hand seals as well before sinking into the ground. As Naruto watched on silently seconds later, the Slade commandos were dragged into the ground feet first, as several Narutos burst out of the ground. Doten. Shinji Zanshu no Jutsu. Naruto stated as the clones then came out of the ground and swung their swords, taking the heads off of the many Slade commandos, and leaving only the hive droids for him to deal with. Snapping his fingers, Naruto's clones all made their way back to him before seemingly sinking into his body. Whoa, what was all that? Cyborg wondered aloud, and Nightwing merely shook his head with a wide-eyed look. Hearing a groan, Cyborg ignored it while Beast Boy slowly sat up and rubbed his head with a visible grimace on his face. Ugh, dude's what I miss. Beast Boy suddenly questioned, while sitting up, and then looked to the others, before looking to whatever they were staring at. Seeing what appeared to be a dark ominous figure in the distance and numerous decapitated Slade commandos causing the green teen to shiver. Whoa, talk about majorly creepy, who is that guy? Beast Boy questioned of his friends and Cyborg turned, looking more than just a little pair as he answered the green teen. That would be Raven's boyfriend, when he's officially pissed off. Cyborg answered and Beast Boy gaped, while turning to Naruto as he raised the Kusanagi into the air, and began to spin it above him. Wind collected along the blade as he did, thus causing a mini hurricane to hover over the blade before Naruto swung the sword, tearing through everything that was left of the attacking forces, leaving him as the sole person standing on the battlefield, while the Titans watched on. Dude, if I'm ever about to piss him off, slap me. Beast Boy suddenly said, Cyborg nodding his head while Naruto looked around the area for a clue to Raven's whereabouts. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto then turned and saw Ravager herself standing on a rooftop and smirking down at him. Growling, Naruto vanished and appeared in the air before her, before landing with a soft plop. Backing up a few paces, Ravager took in the blonde-haired youth's appearance, and couldn't help a slight shudder. I must say Mr. Uzumaki, I absolutely adore the mask, I'm not so sure about the cloak though. Ravager quips with an amused smirk, and Naruto narrowed his eyes onto her dangerously. You have the next 5 seconds to tell me where Raven is, or I'm going to cut you in half. Naruto growled out and given his obviously very violent temper, Ravager was fairly certain he'd make good on that threat. I see someone needs to learn how to control their temper. Ravager teased and then saw a quick vision of Naruto swinging his Kusanagi at her. Quickly evading the attack, Ravager raised a brow as the sword cut into concrete, as if it was cardboard. That is a very interesting sword, but I don't have time to study it, and if you want to find your precious bird. Ravager mused to herself then smirked as she turned, and started to run from Naruto, before sliding to a stop a ways from him with a smirk. Then you'll have to follow me to her. Ravager then called out and Naruto grunted before lunging after the woman as she made her way towards the warehouse, where the Konohinin were lying in wait. Behind Naruto, a pair of glowing green eyes were briefly opened before vanishing, as a transparent shimmer flew behind the pair. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.